My son's wife called me worthless to my face. And by sunset, I was standing on my porch with a plastic grocery bag in my hand and nowhere to go. Let me tell you how it happened. I'm 62 years old. My knees talk louder than the news some mornings. My bones feel like old door hinges, creaking, stubborn, the kind you forget to oil. But they still work. I wear this soft blue cardigan with a snag on the left sleeve. Caught it on the back door latch last spring. I keep 2 hairpins and a peppermint in my pocket because that's what grandmothers do. We stay ready for the little things. But I wasn't ready for what happened with my son and his wife. Lord have mercy, I was not ready. The first time she said it, I was sitting at their kitchen table, just stirring my coffee. That spoon was clinking against the ceramic, loud in the quiet, and I remember thinking I should stop, but my hands needed something to do. The window above the sink looked out over their backyard. Neat little square grass. That grill my boy saved up for sitting on the patio like a trophy. Everything smelled like lemon cleaner and fresh paint. New, clean, perfect. I'd come over to help with the baby. That's what grandmothers do, right? I changed diapers singing old hymns, folded those tiny onesies and pressed them against my cheek because baby clothes are the softest thing in this world. You understand what I'm saying? She walked in holding her phone, those white nails tapping against the screen, looked up at me. We need to set some boundaries. It's too much. You, this, everything. I blinked, set my spoon down. What do you mean? She smiled, like I should already know. Didn't say another word, just walked back out. Later that evening, when my son came home from work, she stood right in front of him. I was sitting on their couch, holding my coffee cup even though it gone cold. She said, "Your mother is all drama. She's useless around the house. We don't need her help." Useless. She said useless while looking straight at me. My throat closed up. I swallowed that word like a hot coal, felt it burn all the way down. My son, my baby boy, put his hands on his hips. Used to do that when he was little, pretending to be big and tough. He shifted his weight from foot to foot and tried to smile it off. "Ma, maybe give us a little space this week. We need to figure out our routine." I nodded. What else could I do? I gathered my purse, put on my shoes, walked to my car in the driveway while the sun was setting behind their roof. When I got home, I took off those shoes and cried into the crook of my elbow so the neighbors wouldn't hear through the walls. That was the beginning. That word, useless, it stuck to me like gum on a shoe. Now, let me tell you something about myself, about where I come from. I was a young mother once, living on the west side in a 2-bedroom apartment that got too hot in summer and too cold in winter. I counted coupons at the kitchen table every Sunday night while that old box fan in the window pushed the heat around. My son would press his little face into my apron and ask why his daddy left. I told him not to worry, told him his father wasn't the measure of his life. I picked up extra shifts at the nursing home, wore white shoes that squeaked down those long hallways. My legs would swell by evening, my back would ache, but my heart stayed steady. Maybe I spoiled him. Maybe I loved him too hard. Sometimes when you love a child that much, they grow up thinking love is a faucet they can turn on and off whenever they want to. You know what I mean? I gave him quarters for the arcade, gave him the last piece of chicken even when I was hungry. He went to prom in a rented tux that didn't fit quite right, and I sat on that old floral couch taking pictures with a disposable camera. When he left for college, we tied a blue ribbon around his suitcase handle because the zipper kept slipping. He called me every Sunday. We'd talk about his classes, about the weather, about money, always money, and I'd pray into the phone without saying amen out loud. So when his wife said I shouldn't come by unless invited, that I should text first and wait for a clear yes, I told myself to be gracious. New marriages are like new shoes. They rub until they don't. I bought them a meal plan subscription, sent them groceries every other week, slid gas money into his jacket pocket when he wasn't looking. I was trying to ease their way, trying to help. Then one afternoon, I was out back clipping my rose bush, the one I raised from a twig, and my phone buzzed. I wiped my hands on my cardigan and tapped the message. It was from her. We need the nursery furniture you offered, but can you send the money instead? We found something better. I'd saved up for months for that crib, found a sturdy one at the thrift store, cleaned it until it smelled like lavender and furniture polish. It was solid wood, safe, a place a baby could dream in. I texted back, I'd like to bring it by anyway. She replied with a thumbs down emoji. Please don't, we want new. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the hum of the refrigerator sounding like a sermon. I counted my retirement pennies, looked at my bank statement, did the math 3 times. Then I wrote a check I couldn't afford. I folded it into a card with a little bear on the front and a Bible verse inside, Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go. My son picked it up from my porch the next day, hugged me quick with one arm, eyes already drifting back to his car where she sat scrolling on her phone. He said, "Thanks, Ma." Then he was gone. The baby shower came next. They chose one of those modern venues with floor-to-ceiling windows and white chairs, everything minimal and photo-ready. Her friends wore outfits that matched the balloon arch. I wore my floral dress, the one with the tiny blue flowers and the soft belt, and my black church flats because they don't hurt my bunions as much. I brought my gift wrapped in tissue paper, a quilt I made by hand, stitched at night with the TV on low, needle pricking memory into every square. One piece was from my son's elementary school field day shirt. Another from a blouse my mama wore to Easter service in 1992. I tucked an old photo of her inside the box, thinking they'd like to see the lineage of hands that made it. When it came time to open presents, my gift got set to the side. I waited, watched them open the fancy stroller with the cup holders, the bassinet that clips into the car. People clapped and said, "Only the best for that baby." Finally, I spoke up. "Could you open mine?" She looked at me. Her smile was tight. "We'll open it later." I sat there, folding and unfolding a napkin into a little triangle while everyone else laughed and took pictures. I felt small, real small. 3 days later, my son called. "Ma, the quilt is nice, but we want the baby to have everything brand new. It's a vibe we're going for." A vibe. I held my breath. Let that word pass me like a draft through a house that needs weather stripping. "You know how she is," he added, like that explained everything. I said, "I know how I am too, and I'm the kind of woman who makes quilts for babies." Then I hung up and cried into the leftover square of fabric from his kindergarten shirt. The second blow came about money. It always does, doesn't it? He called and asked if I could co-sign on a small loan, just to help bridge them until his bonus came through. He talked fast and soft, a habit he picked up in college when he learned that enough nice words could make cinder blocks sound like pillows. I knew better, but I also knew what it felt like to be out of breath with bills. I said, "Let me think on it and pray." "If you love me, you would just do it." I stopped breathing for a second. I said, "I love you either way," quietly. I didn't co-sign, and something small turned in him, like a lock catching. Not long after, I got a text from her. It's for the best if I handle communications about the baby. You make him anxious. Me, his mother. I stared at those words until the letters blurred together. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed, I understand. I wanted to add, I'm not the enemy, but I didn't. Some wars are fought without flags. You ever sat at a kitchen table at 2 in the morning with a bowl of cereal that tastes like the past? That's how grief sits, heavy and quiet. The baby was born on a Sunday, just before noon. They sent a group text with a photo, a perfect little face wrapped in a blanket with tiny gray stars. Not grandbaby. I whispered thank you to the empty room. My hands shook as I typed, she's beautiful. When can I see her? She wrote back, we'll let you know. I baked banana bread, wrapped it in foil, knitted a little hat because my own grandmother always kept our heads warm. They said the wind could carry away our good sense if we weren't careful. Put everything in a tote bag and waited by the phone. No call. 2 days later, I texted again. Not a good time. He's tired. I imagined my son walking the floor at 3 a.m., bleary-eyed and exhausted. That's what I do best, walk with people in the dark until the light comes up. But they didn't want me there. When they finally invited me over, it was for 1 hour. 1. I wore my cardigan, brought the hat and the banana bread, sat on the edge of their sofa with my knees squeezed together like I didn't want to take up too much space. The baby smelled like soap and milk and something ancient as time itself. I held her against my chest, felt the rhythm of her breath. My son hovered nearby, nervous, glancing at his wife for approval like he was waiting for a grade. She watched me like I might drop a curse on the child instead of a blessing. When I kissed the baby's forehead, she cleared her throat. Please don't put your mouth on her face. I lifted my head slow, like something heavy was sitting on my neck. I'll kiss her little toes then, I said softly. Please don't, she said. I handed my grandbaby back, folded my hands in my lap like I was in church. The hour crawled by like a wounded animal. Another twist came when my electric bill spiked. I don't know why, maybe the hot spell that wouldn't let go, maybe the old fridge finally giving up. I called my son to see if he still had that tube box his uncle gave him. No answer. I texted. No answer. Days turned into a week. Finally, she texted from his phone, he's busy. Please respect his time. As if asking for a screwdriver was grand larceny. The worst came on a rainy Tuesday. I slipped on my front steps, landed hard on my hip. Nothing broken, just a bruise the side of my palm and pain that kept surfacing like a fish at the edge of a pond. I called my son, asked him if he could drive me to my doctor appointment. He didn't pick up. She texted, he can't, he's at work, you should call a ride. I stared out the window at my wet rose bush, told myself to stand, to get my purse and umbrella, to hold my head up in that waiting room and say my name clearly. I did all that. Nobody clapped. That night I lay in bed praying those short prayers old women pray when words run out. Lord, send me through. Lord, keep the baby safe. Lord, show me how to keep love from turning into shame. I felt my heart beating in my ear, told myself there was still time. The Lord has a way of making slow miracles. I'd always planned to leave my little house to my son. It's not much, but it's got a front porch wide enough for 2 chairs and a wind chime. The kitchen gets the kind of light that makes you think you can cook anything. There are marks on the door frame where I measured his height every birthday. You can't buy that in any catalog. One evening they came by with papers. She wore a blazer like she was heading to a business meeting. He looked at the floor more than my face. She spread the documents across my kitchen table. The house should be in all our names for tax reasons, she said.
talked about refinancing and equity and market trends. I said I needed to think about it. She pushed the pen across the table. "It's just a formality." My son didn't say a word, not one word. I made tea to give my hands something to do. I kept remembering the winter his father left, how the heat gave out and I boiled water on the stove to take the chill off the air. I don't remember crying that winter. I remember being busy. Sometimes busy is how you survive. I looked at those papers, thought about the bruise on my hip, about the baby hat they never put on her in any photo, about the word useless still sitting in my chest like a stone. "No," I said, quiet but steady. "This house is mine until the Lord calls me home. Then it'll be yours, son, not today." Silence. My son shifted his feet. She gathered the papers, lips pressed into a thin line. "We're just trying to protect you. You're not getting any younger." I smiled without showing teeth. "That's true, but I still know what I'm doing." She left first. My son lingered in the doorway for a moment. There was a flicker there, a boy who used to run to the door when I came home from the second shift. Then it was gone. A week later, I got a notice from the bank about an inquiry I hadn't made. My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step in the dark. I called my son. No answer. Called again. She texted back, "Stop harassing him during work." I took the bus to the bank, sat with a woman who wore a gold bracelet that tapped against her wrist when she typed. She told me everything was fine, no changes had been made. Still, I walked home with my hands balled in my pockets like I could hold myself together with my fists. That night, I took out a metal box from the back of my closet. Inside were the papers that matter. The deed, my will, notes from the lawyer who helped me after his father passed. I ran my hand over my own name, over the black ink that said what would happen to this place after I'm gone. I whispered to the house, "You're safe." I don't know if walls can hear, but I swear mine sighed.
Sometimes mercy comes dressed like a neighbor with Tupperware. Miss Evelyn next door has lived on this block longer than anyone. She wears her hair in a soft silver puff and walks with a cane covered in stickers. She saw me limping and brought over chicken soup. We ate at my table with the radio playing old Motown, just low enough to count as company. "You don't have to pretend with me," she said. I told her pieces, not everything, because you don't throw your child to the wolves, even when they act like a stranger. But I told enough. She reached across and squeezed my hand. Her ring was warm. People who haven't walked through hard times don't understand how easy it is to shame the ones who made their path smooth. She told me to keep my papers locked and my heart open. I laughed, because that's like patting your head and rubbing your belly at the same time. Still, I wrote it on a sticky note and put it on the fridge. For a while, things were quiet. I took the bus to the grocery, watched the baby grow through photos on social media, saved my pennies, stayed out of trouble. Then came Thanksgiving. I offered to bring sweet potato pie. She said dessert was covered. I offered to bring greens. She said no offense, but we're doing a modern menu. I asked if I could at least say grace. She said we do inclusive moments, not prayers. I told myself to breathe. When I arrived, everything looked like a magazine spread. White plates, white candles, little wooden place cards with names written in perfect script. I looked for mine, looked again. There was one that said Mama at the far end of the table, next to the high chair. I smiled and sat down. Then I heard her voice float in from the kitchen. "We have to keep her busy so she's not asking for attention." The words came through crisp as crackers. During dinner, I tried to tell a story about my grandmother's sweet potato pie, how she always put a little orange zest in the filling. My son cleared his throat mid-sentence, changed the subject to sports. I sipped my water, watched the baby playing with a soft spoon. Halfway through the meal, she asked if I could take the baby to the back room for a nap. I did it, because that's what I do. But when I came back, dessert was half eaten. The pie cut into neat squares, laughter floating around the living room like bubbles I couldn't reach. I stood there like a coat on a hook. On my way out, I heard her say, "We made it through with no drama. Progress." My son just said, "Yeah." I went home, slipped off my flats, sat on the edge of my bed with my hands open on my knees. The night felt heavy, pressing down on my shoulders. I prayed that short prayer tired women pray when words run out. Lord, keep me from turning bitter. Lord, teach me how to hold my dignity in both hands.
The next day, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was from a woman at church I hadn't seen in months. She said she'd run into my daughter-in-law at the store and heard that I was struggling with boundaries and needed resources for aging. I stared at those words until they meant nothing. I don't think my daughter-in-law is evil. I think she's afraid. People who are afraid build little fences around everything and call it safety. They declare that any love that doesn't look like theirs is a threat. But fear doesn't excuse cruelty. You understand what I'm saying? I called my son, asked if I could come over and talk with just him for a minute. "She doesn't like secrets," he said. "A mother is not a secret," I said back. He sighed that sigh men do when love feels like a chore. "Okay, come by, but don't start anything." When I arrived, he was on the porch, arms folded, shoulders hunched. I wanted to fix him a plate, wanted to tuck him in for a nap like when he was little. Instead, I said, "Baby, I raised you to be kind and strong at the same time. You can do both. You can love your wife and stand up for your mother. Those aren't enemies." He wouldn't look at me. "She says you make her feel judged," he said. I laughed once, a sound I didn't like. I'm judged every time I walk through that door, and still I bring banana bread. "Maybe we need a break," he said finally. "A real one. No visits for a while." The words fell between us like a plate that didn't break, but might as well have. I nodded slow. "Okay. But hear me. One day your daughter will ask what kind of man you are. I pray you can tell her you were the kind who honored your mother." He swallowed, looked away. "I'll call you," he said. Then he didn't. I spent those weeks with my hands in warm dishwater and my mind in old memories. I remembered his little hands holding on to my apron when thunder shook the windows. I remembered the chickenpox summer and how his cheeks dried and peeled like paper. I remembered the time he fell off his bike and I ran shoeless down the sidewalk to lift him up. I remembered the first time he brought her to meet me, how I stood at the stove and oversalted the greens 'cause I was nervous. I remembered that he's my boy. Memory can be a blessing. It can also be a second loss. Christmas came snowless but cold. I set one place at my table, put a tiny tree on the counter with lights that blinked like they were trying to stay awake. I wrapped 3 small gifts for the baby anyway. Put him in a bag with silver tissue paper. Around noon, my doorbell rang. I opened it, hopeful as a girl. It was a courier with a padded envelope. Inside were the keys I'd given my son years ago and a note in her handwriting. "For safety. Please don't drop by unannounced again." I sat down on the steps with those keys in my palm. The metal was still warm from the mailman's hand. That's when something in me settled. I didn't plan revenge, didn't throw a fit. I just felt my breath go in and out, in and out. I heard my mother's voice in my head, stand up, wash your face, eat something. So I did. In January, I took a part-time job at the community center, teaching little ones to read. The room smelled like glue sticks and crayons. The kids called me Miss Loretta in the sweetest way, their little tongues pushing the T sound. We'd sit on the carpet and sound out cat and dog and sun, and I felt whole again. After class, I'd make tea in a styrofoam cup and share laughs with the janitor, Mr. Phillips. He told the longest stories about his fishing days. Grief needs people, he said one day. I wrote it on another sticky note. I started walking in the mornings, too, past the old maple, whose roots have lifted the sidewalk into ripples, past the corner store where the owner keeps fresh donuts by the register. My hip still fussed, but there's a difference between pain that owns you and pain you carry. I carried mine. In February, I saw them at the grocery store. The baby was in the cart, big eyes taking everything in. She saw me first. Something in her face lit up. I waved small, didn't want to start trouble, then turned down the next aisle. I heard her say to my son, "Don't." I kept walking. I only stopped when I reached the baby aisle and saw a little pink hat on the shelf. For a second, I was back at my kitchen table with yarn and needles and hope. Tears pushed up behind my eyes, but I blinked them back. A woman can't cry every time the past walks by. 2 days later, I found a pacifier on my porch, tucked in the corner by the steps like a white flag or a dare. No note. I picked it up, washed it, set it on the mantel, not because I expected them to come back for it, but because sometimes a room needs a small sign that love had been there once.
Spring came with its usual drama. Daffodils showing off. The city sending notices about sidewalk repairs. Miss Evelyn's nephew visiting with loud music and a smile that could sell water to a river. I cleaned my windows, opened them wide, let the air move through my rooms like a choir. I wasn't happy, but I wasn't undone either. Then the phone rang. It was the hospital. I didn't understand at first. There's a way voices change when it's bad news, a kind of tidy sympathy that makes you brace yourself. My son had been in a car accident. Not fatal, thank God, but shaken up, bruised, stitches in his forehead, a shoulder that needed rest. "I'll come," I said. The nurse paused. "He's requested only his wife." I went anyway. Sat in the waiting room with a cup of coffee that tasted like nothing, prayed, watched the TV in the corner showing the news without sound, people moving their mouths and pointing at maps. After an hour, she came out. Her eyes were red. For a second, we was just two women who loved the same person in different ways. "He's okay," she said. "Thank you, Lord," I whispered. We stood there, unsure. Then she squared her shoulders. "He doesn't want visitors. Please go home." I nodded, turned to leave. Then I heard his voice. "Ma?" He was behind her in a wheelchair, bandage above his eyebrow, mouth soft with pain. She looked startled, then irritated. "Let me talk to my mother," he said. I stepped forward slow. He took my hand like it was a porch rail holding him up. "I'm sorry," he said, voice small. "I haven't been right." His wife studied the floor.
The baby don't sleep, money's tight, work's been pressure every single day. I let it all make me hard in the wrong direction. He looked at me with those eyes I used to kiss goodnight. I don't know how to fix it. I squeezed his hand. Start with telling the truth. He nodded, looked at his wife. She looked at me. I saw something flicker in her face. Not love, not yet, but a release, like her grip had loosened. We can talk later, she said quietly, and she wheeled him back to his room. I went home with my hands trembling and my heart doing a slow dance. I didn't think everything was solved, didn't fool myself into believing one moment fixed everything. But the earth had shifted. Sometimes that's all you get.
The next week, he called every day. Short calls at first. Weather, pain meds. How's your hip, Ma? Then longer. He asked for the banana bread recipe. Asked if I still had that old quilt. I said yes to both. He asked if he could bring the baby by for an hour while his wife took a nap. I set the house like a stage for joy. Put the quilt on the sofa, set a bowl of sliced strawberries on the table, put the pacifier on a coaster like it was a relic. When they arrived, the baby reached for my hairpins and laughed when I hid them in my palm. My son watched me like he was trying to remember a song. He touched the quilt. I remember this shirt, he said softly. I know you do, I said. His wife stood in the doorway, didn't come in. I walked to her slow. I'm not trying to take anything from you, I said. I only want to be who I am, her mother, her grandmother. She swallowed. Her eyes were damp. I felt judged, she said again, but softer this time. I'm new at this. Everything feels like a test. I nodded. It is, but not the kind you pass or fail, the kind where you just keep showing up. We weren't best friends after that. Don't let me lie to you. There was still days with silence, days with tension. But there were also Tuesdays where I watched the baby while she went to the dentist. Fridays where my son came over and fixed the back door latch for real. Sundays where we ate pancakes that were too thick, but nobody complained. Karma came slow, and not in the way you might think. A month after the accident, her own mother went through a health scare, something that sent her to bed for 2 weeks. My daughter-in-law called me at 6 a.m., voice tight with panic. I answered on the first ring, put on my cardigan, showed up. I cooked eggs, folded laundry, rocked the baby while she took a shower that lasted long enough to rinse off a month of exhaustion. When she came out, hair wet, face clean, she said thank you. Real thank you, from the center. Later in the kitchen while I stirred her mother's soup, she said, I was wrong about you. I looked at her. I was wrong about you too. We stood there in the steam and the quiet. I said, forgiveness is not a poem. It's a chore. You wash it, dry it, fold it, and the next day you do it again. She smiled a little. That's a lot of work. It is, I said, but it makes a home.
The bruise on my hip faded to a light yellow, then left altogether. The rosebush started another round of blooms, stubborn and bright. One afternoon, I sat on the porch with my grandbaby on my lap. The wind chime was doing its soft little concert. My son came out with 2 glasses of lemonade, handed me one, sat in the other chair. I'm sorry for making you feel small, he said. I took a sip, looked at the street, kids on scooters, a dog barking 2 blocks over.
We all made each other feel small for a while, I said. He nodded. I know. He touched my hand. We watched the baby kick her feet and try to catch the shadow of her own toes. That evening, I put the quilt over the back of the sofa and stood for a long time looking at it. The squares told our story, whether we wanted them to or not. The Easter blouse, the field day t-shirt, the church program lace, the new fabric I'd added to fit it all together. That's family. Old and new sewn together with the same thread. Pulled tight, then loosened, then pulled tight again, until it lays flat enough to keep a child warm. I'm not telling you this because I want a medal. I'm telling you because I don't want you to give up. Even when they call you worthless, even when they try to forget you, you're stitched into the fabric whether they see it or not. Keep your paper safe. Keep your heart open. It's hard work, but it's holy work. And if you ever find a pacifier on your porch, wash it and put it on the mantle. Love comes back in the strangest ways. The summer brought heat that pressed a hand to the back of your neck. On those sticky afternoons, I'd sit under the porch fan with a glass of iced tea sweating rins onto the table. Sometimes my daughter-in-law would join me, hair wrapped up, shoulders bare, feet in sandals that made a little slap-slap sound on the boards when she crossed and uncrossed her legs. We'd talk about the baby's new teeth, about the best detergent for getting out grass stains, about shows we pretended we didn't watch too much. She started telling me pieces of her own story. Her father left when she was 10. Her mother worked nights and slept days. She learned early that love ran out if you didn't guard it. Mine ran out, and I still gave it away, I said. We laughed, and the laugh didn't have any knives in it. One afternoon, my son called while we were shelling peas into a big bowl. "Ma, could you come by the apartment? The landlord's fussy about the back door lock." I went with my toolbox. The hallway smelled like someone's dinner and bleach. I fixed the lock with 2 turns and a little oil. The landlord came by to check, saw me with the screwdriver in my hand. "You the mother?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Good to have you around," he said. I went home with a lightness in my step that felt like 20 years ago. We had setbacks, too. Don't let me paint this picture all rosy. There was a day in August when she snapped at me in the kitchen for stirring the sauce. "We don't do it that way," she said, and I felt that old heat rise in my chest. I put the spoon down, went to the porch, counted the mailboxes across the street. My son came out. "She's having a hard day." "So am I said. He took my hand. "I know, but we're not enemies." I looked at him. "Say it again." "We're not enemies." We stared at the oak tree until the anger left us like sweat. Later that night, she came to my door with a jar of sauce and a sheepish smile. "I don't know everything," she said. "Teach me how you do it." We stood shoulder to shoulder at my stove. I showed her how my mother taught me. Sprinkle a little sugar to cut the acid. Give it time without touching it too much. The sauce turned glossy as a promise. I learned that peace is not one big decision. It's 100 small surrenders and a handful of holy stubbornness. I kept my house in my name, kept my stories on my tongue, kept a seat at my table for whoever needed it, and I kept the picture of my grandbaby on the fridge with the magnet shaped like a strawberry, because sweetness should be the last thing you see before you close the door. Years later, and I mean years, baby, When the baby was old enough to ask why the quilt squares didn't match, I told her the truth. Life is like that, I said. Pieces from everywhere. Some soft, some stiff, some stained, some brand new. You stitch them together and you make cover. She nodded like she understood more than she could explain. She traced a finger over the Easter blouse square. Who's this from? I told her about her great-great-grandmother, who made peach cobbler so good the whole church would go silent for a minute in the middle of dessert. She laughed. Then she rested her cheek on the quilt like she was listening for a heartbeat. My son got a promotion at work. My daughter-in-law started a little business from the spare room, making gift baskets for new mothers, lotion and tea and soft socks. She asked me what to put in for grandmothers. I said peppermints and hairpins. She added a small prayer card that said, "You are not forgotten." I don't know if that was for me. Maybe it was for the whole world. One Sunday, right before dinner, my son came to me with another set of papers. He held them carefully, like they might bite. "Ma, I revised my will. If anything happens to us, you and her mother have equal say about the baby. I want it in writing." I took the papers, read the words slowly, felt the new shape of our family forming in legal ink. "Thank you," I said. And the thank you we shared then felt different from any before it, like we were placing a brick for a house that could last. Now, let me tell you about karmic justice. Folks like to say it's when the people who hurt you get what's coming for them. Maybe that happens sometimes, but the deeper justice I've seen is softer. Kinda. The woman who once called me worthless learned the worth of old hands. The boy who forgot his mother remembered. And the grandmother who cried into her sweater found her way to a porch where the wind chime keeps time with the evening, and a little girl laughs at shadows on the wall. Do I still keep my papers locked? Yes. Do I still keep my heart open? I try. Some days I pinch it shut, then pry it back with prayer. I've learned to forgive in installments. I've learned that truth doesn't need an audience, only a witness. And I've learned that love is not what you feel about people when they treat you right. Love is what you decide to keep doing when they don't, at least not yet. If you're listening to me because someone in your house made you small, hear me now. You are a quilt square. You're not the whole blanket, no, but you're stitched in. They can't undo what God has already sown. Keep your dignity. Keep your documents. Keep your hairpins and your peppermints. And when the people you raised with cracked hands and prayers finally turn back around, and they will, baby, they will, you be ready. Not with revenge, not with "I told you so," but with a porch chair, a glass of lemonade, and arms that still know how to hold. That's how you win, not by being right, but by still being there when they're ready to come home. Now, I'm gonna sit here on this porch a little while longer, watch the sun go down, listen to these wind chimes sing. And tomorrow, I'll wake up and do it all over again, because that's what grandmothers do. We keep loving. We keep showing up. We keep stitching pieces together until they look like family. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to forgive someone who called you worthless? How did you do it? And if you're going through this right now, drop a heart below. Let me know you're out there. Let me know you hear me. Because, baby, you are not alone.